For the past several weeks, I have been working late nights in the office so I can finish work early so I can have breakfast with the kids and do the school runs. Tonight the boss let me finish halfway though my shift due to the amount of work I have put in on a project that now completed. On the drive home I was looking forward to as time with the little ones in bed. Well, I walked into my wife fucking some bloke on the sofa. Deer in headlight moment, I grabbed my keys and now I am in the office wondering what the hell I am going to do now. My phone is blowing up with calls and texts from my wife telling me to come back so she can explain. I just can't. I am so pissed off right now. Never thought she would cheat on me. We have been happily married for over a decade. Sure, we have had our arguments over the years, but what married couple hasn't? Given her everything she asked for along 3 beautiful kids. I, 32M, have been married to my wife, 30F, for 5 years, and it feels like in the last year she's become a complete stranger. We were both established when we met, and at first it felt like we shared the same values. I went to a trade school and learned a very technical job. I worked shit entry-level jobs before I proved myself and built a reputation in coding to the point where my references trump my education. My wife has a graduate degree and works in a management position. This created a bit of what I thought was friendly tension at the time. Early on, I bitched about middle management. I saw them as roadblocks between me and finishing tasks. My wife saw middle management as necessary for directing personnel and resources. Personally, I was stuck with a bad string of middle managers that thought code developers were modular and replaceable. They set unreasonable deadlines, promised features to clients, and created scope creep. Every time I told her about the next boneheaded thing my manager instituted, she always took his side. Note, she never met him. He sees things you don't, she says. After about a year of dating, I learned to stop telling her about my day at work if it doesn't involve days off or raises. I always felt like she resented the fact I didn't go back to school for a 4-year graduate degree. She pushed about it early on before marriage, but when I broke down the loans and debt, she dropped it. She was relatively debt-free when we married, as was I. As I said, we were pretty close in earning power as well. About 2 years ago, I started working for a company that had an owner that talked to me directly. He saw value in me and my potential. I now make 50% more than my wife, and my manager is a guy that works well with me. While not a technical lead, he embodies what a scrum master should be. I would say he knows how to stay out of my way, but that makes it sound adversarial. He's a great supervisor. The first 4 years of marriage went great, overall. I didn't complain about manager's form work and she didn't push me to dump thousands into a piece of paper and debt. We had fun, went on date nights several times a month, shared hobbies, cooked together, read books together, and watched movies together. When the first lockdown hit, we both worked from home. Our house is really nice, with 3 spare bedrooms for if we eventually had kids. One was already converted into an office for me, and when lockdown started, we converted the second one into an office for her. We both telecommuted, but we both had very different philosophies about it. I would get up, make breakfast, shower, shave, dress in a suit, then walk into my home office. I hate suits and ties, by the way. But it does put me in the mental state of, okay, this is work time. My wife, however, rolls out of bed, eats breakfast, brushes her teeth, puts on a t-shirt and sweatpants, and goes into her office with the iPad to play Candy Crush between emails. I guess I see it as work from home and she sees it as work from home. I digress. It's the weirdest thing how proximity can create distance. She has several meetings a day, and I can tell because she keeps her door wide open and I can hear them. I have 1 meeting a day, a scrum, and it's short. I close my door for mine. 5 months ago she said she felt insulted that I closed my door for the daily scrum. I explained that it's for peace and to keep my mind focused on work. She said she felt like I was hiding something. I tried to keep up our hobbies together, but she brushed it off as we see each other all day as is. I should have pressed, but I didn't. I treated the lockdown as temporary, and maybe I shouldn't have. It got really bad when her company instituted a partial office reopening. She jumped at the chance to be part of the 50% of the company back in a rearranged office to allow social distancing. I don't blame her, I miss working at the office too, but my company hasn't opened up the offices yet, and as long as I have access to my dev environment, it really isn't needed. I think several of her other coworkers got into her head. She would stay after work to hang out with them, have drinks at a coworker's place. I pressed and wanted to know more, but she was secretive and guarded. She became colder and colder too. It felt like I had a roommate and not a wife at that point. Last month, on a weekend, she put her old iPad on the desk and said, "Can you wipe this? I want to gift this to my niece." I shrugged. I often do that sort of thing for the family and didn't think much about it. Off she went to another company gathering and I switched on the iPad. Maybe my wife was becoming so brazen, maybe she thought I wouldn't check it and just do a factory reset. Point is, I checked it and saw her messaging app. Pics, videos, IMs with her boss. They've been having an affair for 2 months. I can't describe the feeling in my veins. It was like my blood turned to ice. It reminded me of the scene in Equilibrium where the polygraph flatlined. I copied everything, packaged it into cloud storage I use for dev projects separate from work, and started looking for a lawyer. I didn't confront at first because I wasn't sure what I would do. The new sensation in my body felt like I was both numb and walking through water. She didn't notice or didn't care. By that point, we were already dead bedroom. We were really in the roommate stage, I guess. I contacted a lawyer and he wanted to keep investigating and me to keep my mouth shut. He suggested I get a private investigator and suggested a good one. For the last 4 weeks we were gathering evidence and he was preparing the filing for divorce. Be patient, he kept telling me. And my ice-filled veins and her indifference made it easy at first. Yesterday, my lawyer told me he had the filing almost ready. Our state is at fault and the PI got photos, video, plus the texts. It was pretty much a slam dunk. Then, last night, I don't know what happened to me, but the ice turned to fire. She came home, late of course, and I don't even remember what she said to me, but I went off. I said I hoped it was worth fucking her boss. She turned mean, nasty, vindictive. She said I wasn't there for her emotionally. I was just lounging all day at home, even if I was earning the lion's share at home. I wasn't intellectually stimulating, even though I work a highly technical job. I told her I had a lawyer and she laughed. She said my bluff was pathetic. There was no way I was leaving her. That even if I divorced her, she would get half my paycheck. If I stayed with her, at least I would get to occasionally have sex, so I shouldn't mess this up. She was a different person. I said to her that's not a marriage. She laughed, again. Honey, this is the 21st century. A woman can have her cake and eat it too. She laughed again and she went to bed. I emailed my boss and said I needed a week off to handle a family issue. He of course granted it. I slept on the couch in my office. This morning, she left as I was getting dressed and only said don't wait up. I went to my lawyer's office and he said he had the papers ready. He had a process server with him and asked how I wanted the papers served. I told him. My lawyer, bless him, laughed and said you better not. I've had so many people want to do a cutesy or revenge serving and I always talk them out of it. Judges don't have a sense of humor. He told me how this could cost me alimony or assets. I didn't care. Her words burned me. I wanted her burned back. The lawyer did his best to keep telling me not to, but he relented when he saw how serious I was about this. The process server, he heard my idea. He laughed as well and said, "You're my hero." I had to special order something with a rush cost. Sent the process server to pick it up and deliver that, with the papers, to my wife's work. Process server told me what happened when he was done. He said he had to. He said he showed up at her office with the large box and papers. He found my wife talking and laughing with a group of coworkers and friends and asked her name. She confirmed and asked what it was about. He put the box on a nearby desk and opened it. It was a cake, one that you could get a custom image printed on in frosting. I didn't even know that was a thing until this morning. The image was an image of my wife and her boss in an embrace. Clothed, but obvious what they were doing, with the words "Here's your cake. Eat it!" piped in icing above the image. Process server put the papers next to the cake box on the table. "You've been served," he said. What happened next was a loud screech from her. At least 8 people in the office saw the cake. My wife freaked and swatted the large cake box off the table, where it fell on the carpet, but with the image still visible. Several of her coworkers started berating her, and she started crying and screaming. The process server took a hasty retreat. My phone blew up and I just kept sending her to voicemail. I don't bother reading her texts. She hasn't come home, but her mother texted me saying she is going to stay over there for now. 5 years ago, right after my divorce, I met this woman at a concert. She was a bit younger than me, but we hit it off and she wound up going to a bar with me and my friends after that show ended. It was a fun night and we exchanged numbers. At that time, I wasn't really using any social media except FB, and that was just to keep up with my kids' school and activities. So, we never friend, just text each other. At first the texts were casual. A little flirty every once in a while, but nothing to suggest there was any interest in anything sexual. Turns out she only lived 20 minutes from me, but we never met up or saw each other. After a couple weeks of texting, we figured out we were both going to be at the same concert again, but this time in another city. It was a guy weekend for me and a girl weekend for her. So, her and her friends met me and my friends before the concert. We did a little bar hopping together. Her and her friends were younger than me and my friends, and I was the only single one amongst my friends. We, my friends and I, noticed none of these girls were wearing wedding rings. So, we assumed they were all not married. They were all younger than us and there didn't seem to be much interest outside of being friends. That was fine. At the time I wasn't interested in a relationship anyway. After going to a couple bars, we went to the concert. Her and her friends had floor tickets and me and my friends had seats. I thought that was the end of it for that night. After the concert, me and my friends went to a bar and then to our hotels. Right after I got to my room, this woman texted me and asked if I wanted to come have some more drinks with her. She was at a place close to my hotel, so sure, I agreed. I went back out expecting to see her and her friends, but it was just her. I don't even think I finished my drink by the time we were heading back to my hotel. It was awesome. When we got back home, she started coming over to my house during the day. I have a flexible job and most days work from my house. She travels around the area for her job, so she had time to come over during the day. She'd come over after my kids went to school and left before they got home. Some days she was at my house almost the whole time my kids were at school. Even if it wasn't my time with the kids, she was there during the same time. Never at night and never during the weekends. It was just a FWB type relationship. That was perfect for me. I was involved with my kids, even coaching 2 of their teams, so it never interfered with my time with them or my friends. Also, I wasn't looking for a relationship and definitely didn't want a relationship with someone that young that may want kids. I'm done having kids. I was upfront with her about how I felt, and she was fine with it. She said she wasn't looking for a relationship either. This went on for almost a year. Eventually I met someone, my now wife, and broke it off with her. She was fine with that too. We never texted each other again. A year after I met my wife, we got married. 2 years ago, I met this woman again at a neighborhood gathering. Me and my wife were introduced to her and her husband by a friend of mine. They had recently bought the house right next to his. When we first saw each other, it wasn't awkward or anything. We just smiled and said hi. I told my wife about our past when we got home that night. My wife is very understanding. We both accept that we both have had past relationships. No big deal. Her husband turns out to be a pretty cool guy. He starts hanging out with my group of guys' friends, and we become friends too. This year, he joined one of my fantasy football leagues. So, he friends me on FB. After I friend him, he friends my wife. My wife takes a look at his profile and asks how long ago I was FWB with his wife. It was 5 years ago. She shows me a recent post that says he and his wife have been married 8 years.